2021, I got an email from a guy that I didn't really know who he was. I had heard of his company because it was a large company here in Indianapolis, and the roofing market's a pretty small world. And so I had been running a drip campaign for our sheet metal division in my roofing company. Not only did we make the components of sheet metal for metal roof systems and copings and edge metals and all of that type of stuff, but we were actually installing and doing sheet metal type projects for other roofers. So anyways, he sends me this email asking for a meeting. I agree because I thought, hey, maybe this is more opportunity to grow the sheet metal division. And so I go to his office. Receptionist is super nice. She walks me in, gives me a water, does the whole, song and dance, and even walks me to his office. But when I walk into his office, I'm not really greeted with like any sort of like, hey, nice to meet you. It's just like, hey, come in. And he kind of like points at his chair. He's on a Zoom call. And I'm like, what the hell is happening here? And so 10 minutes go by, 15 minutes go by, 20 or 30 minutes goes by. And I'm literally like so lost. I have no idea what they're talking about on the Zoom call. He hasn't really said anything to me. He's like looked over and he's like, give me a thumbs up, kind of like nodding when they say stuff. And I'm like texting my wife and I'm like, hey, I'm literally about to leave. This is like one of the weirdest encounters I've ever had in business. And Zoom call comes to an end, and he, we have a little bit of small talk. He's like, hey, sorry about that. We go back and forth. And then he looks me dead in the eye and he says, would you ever be open to selling your business? So that guy I had the awkward encounter with is actually now one of my good buddies, one of my best friends probably in the roofing industry. But I share it with you guys because it was the moment that triggered what turned into a year-long negotiation that resulted in the acquisition of my roofing company, Jag Roofing and Sheet Metal. And I share all of this with you because what I went through in that year-long negotiation and the outcomes that we had from the mergers and the acquisitions of over 17 or 18 roofing companies all across the country is something that thousands of roofers are going to experience over the next few years. And I just want to shine some light on, number one, what is happening when we talk about private equity and consolidation and mergers and acquisitions and all of those things. Why are they actually doing it? And how can you prepare yourself to either be a part of it or to be successful alongside of this happening here within the industry? So let me explain this whole thing to you guys. The whole idea for this video kind of came about a few weeks back when I was hosting what we call Camp Commercial Roofer. So Camp Commercial Roofer is an event here where we talk about how to grow your roofing business and how to scale like beyond yourself and how to build predictable sales teams, all these things. It's kind of a 3-day deal. Like you fly in the first day and we have like a nice welcome dinner and we kind of just chill, like everyone hangs out by the fire or the hot tub. The next day is, basically all classroom setting, and we move out here and hang out, in the lounge or whatever. And the second day is kind of the same thing before we wrap up. This event happens, right? We call it Camp Commercial Roofer. It's class 001. It's like the groundbreaking class, our first event ever. And so I'm just like mingling around the first night. And we had a table set up over here and there were a few people sitting around it. And I realized that they were talking about conspiracies, right? And I'm like, hey, dude, let me go grab my tinfoil hat. I'm happy to oblige. But I didn't really get a chance to like talk to them that evening. I just kind of knew what they were talking about, right? And I was bouncing around and having like 14 other conversations. But the next morning, everyone's in here for breakfast. We're getting ready to kick off. I've got, a whole slide deck put together. I was like, hey, since some of you guys like conspiracies, let's talk about the theory of illusion. And of course, everyone was kind of like laughing and it was like pretty light. But I showed them some slides that of like this one here, which is like the market map of the technology industry. And this one, which is the market map of the automotive manufacturers industry. And we kind of landed on this market map which is of the food and health industry. And now it's really interesting because, like I said, we're going to talk about the theory of illusion. And so the illusion is that, like, as a consumer, we walk into a grocery store, and I'd say, most people these days are starting to become more health conscious, right? So when we go in, it's like, at least for me and my family, like, we look around the grocery store and we like try to make the best choice for snacks or meals or whatever the case might be. But what's really interesting, a brand like Siete chips, right? Or Siete products, which is, they made chips, wraps, like all of these kind of like whole grain type foods with like very few products, right? They didn't have all kinds of chemicals and stuff inside of them. Eventually those companies all get swallowed up by a bigger fish. And it's unfortunate, but like, it's kind of the world we live in. And this has happened in, like I said, all of these different industries. And the only reason I shared this was not to like, dive deep into conspiracies and turn this from a roofing get together, a roofing mastermind into, a tinfoil hat convention. It was like, I just share this with you guys because the same thing that's happened in all of these other major industries is the exact thing that's happening in the home services industry, and more specifically, the roofing industry. Now, just a few minutes ago, you heard my story about how I kind of got like lured into this guy's office and went through my whole negotiation process, and I ended up getting involved in what I would consider is like the first wave of private equity and bankers coming into the roofing industry. Now, there is a lot of different theories around like why are bankers attracted to this industry? Why is the middle market, like private equity, attracted to the roofing space? And I think what it boils down to is like, it's such a fractured industry, which is like kind of a fluffy term, but like, what does fractured mean? It just means that like, there's no huge players, right? There's no like huge consolidation groups that are doing things any sort of like right way, right? It's not like a right or wrong way. It's like we have people that are doing storm-focused work, we have retail, but there's nobody that's like really put together a roofing model that's been scalable nationwide, and there's no like house brand, right? When you think of consumer products, right? You think of tissues, you think of things like Kleenex, right? But Kleenex isn't a product, it's just a household name. And Band-Aid, it's a bandage, but like Band-Aid is a brand, but it's a household name. So like there's not, in the roofing industry, there's not like just like a name that everyone thinks of when they want to get their roof done, right? Or they think about fixing a leak on their roof. So I think there's room for consolidation in that way, like for somebody to become the household name. And something that's interesting that I saw in the news or in an article a few days back is that like even a conglomerate like Chick-fil-A, their holdings company is CFA Properties, and they're now in the home services sector, right? So it's like there is a notion, there is an aura of like, hey, somebody needs to be that like top dog in the home services space, and I think there's a lot of people going after it. So that would be the reason why. It's just like at the end of the day, I mean, this isn't some like theoretical thesis that I'm like bringing to the table. It's like, no, this is already happening, and I'm living proof of that. And while I think bragging rights do play a big part in it, like I do think that there is a world where like these conglomerates, these banks, these people with large amounts of money do want to be that top dog. Like they do want to be that household name, I keep saying. The ultimate driver behind all of it is always money, right? And so let me explain to you what term that I had never heard of before in the past, which is called consolidation arbitrage, which is, like I said, the main driver and like the ultimate baseline and foundation behind why we have bankers, why we have Wall Street, why we have private equity in the roofing space. So for me personally, just to be completely clear, I do have a holdings company of, currently right now we have 9 roofing companies inside of there. And we're trying to take advantage what one of my partners calls the cream in between, which is like all the hard work we do as building roofing companies and the exit that the private equity and the bankers end up selling our businesses for. There is like a mountain of money in between there. And so he calls it the cream in between, because the reason we're putting our group together and the way I've structured my deal with all of our 9 partner companies and our executive team
is that like rather than allowing private equity or investors or banks into our deals, we're actually taking advantage and we're going to reap the rewards of those mountains of money that the bankers, private equity type firms have been able to kind of keep a secret over the last, hundreds of years, right? Normal people, normal business owners don't realize that like there are levels to the game of business. And there are things that, the everyday small business owner, and I say small business as even, 20, 50, $100 million companies don't understand. And so I'm going to break that down for you right here. I analyzed 4 businesses when we were just getting started with our holdings company. These were the first 4 companies that kind of came into my container. And so I'll leave them nameless for now, but we'll just call them company 1, company 2, company 3, and company 4. Now, when we looked at all of those companies, the first thing we looked at is like, what is their top line revenue on an annual basis? And you'll see that company 1 was doing 2.5 million on, as a run rate on their previous 12, we call it trailing 12, the last 12 months. The company 2 was doing $4 million a year. Company 3 was doing $6 million a year, and company 4 was doing $9 million a year. All, good businesses, right? All making money. And so the next thing is like, okay, we understand there is a top line number, like of some substantiation, but how much money are they actually making? Like how profitable are they individually as individual organizations? And so again, if we run through these companies, company 1 was $300,000 at the end of the year, $480,000 for company 2. The profits for company 3 were $720,000, and company 4 is making about $1 million a year. Now, if you've never heard this term before, EBIT, you definitely want to learn it. You want to understand how it works, how it's calculated, and what it truly means. It's an acronym. So it's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, which at the end of the day, it's like after everything's calculated and added back in, it's like, what is the actual profits within the business? Because some of you guys as business owners, right, you're running personal expenses through the business, all normal stuff. And not to be scolded, but it's like all of that stuff has to be reconfigured to figure out the actual profitability of the business. So quick recap, we had 4 companies. All together, they were doing about just north of $20 million in top line revenue. At the end of the year, all of these companies combined were doing about a net profit of $2.5 million. And that's after everyone had been paid, right? Owners were paid, COGS were paid, overhead expenses were paid. Pretty decent business, right? A little north of 10% EBITDA. And so when we start to look at the 4th column here, it's like, what is a multiple? The multiple is like, what is that business worth? And the way that is calculated is like you take the multiple and multiply that by EBITDA. So if the multiple of company number 1 was a multiple of 2, they were worth $600,000, right? They could sell that business to the right buyer, someone that also saw value in the business for 600,000-ish type business or type money. Next company, could cash out for $1 million on their own. Company number 3, about $1.5 million payout, and company 4 could walk away with a little north of $3 million. Now, these were not set in stone. Like we didn't go do a 409A valuation on all of these businesses. These were just like, hey, what is the market bearing right now for, solo companies selling on their own, not really having systems and processes, everything's still, the owner's still heavily involved. And we basically calculated the individual values for those companies for a total of, all these companies could sell for about $6 million. Here's where things get really interesting. So this is the entire reason that the banks, the private equity, the guys on Wall Street are in the roofing industry right now, because what they realize is that if you can consolidate these 4 companies, you can get them on a sales model where they have predictable sales, meaning that we have marketing and lead generation consistency to bring in new customers, but then we're also retaining those customers with things like maintenance and service agreements. They're also looking at like, hey, how can we structure the financials to all be in alignment and report the same way? And then the third piece and the most important piece out of all of this is like, can we remove key man risk from all of these business? Meaning that like, can we remove the owner and the business still not just operate, but still grow because we've injected systems and processes and scorecards to understand where the business is having constraints, how to overcome those constraints and all of those good things. And if you're able to, which is a big if a lot of times, is like if you're able to do those three things, predictable sales, get the financials in order, and kind of create a transferable value of that business, that this business's consolidated value of like all four of these companies is no longer worth $6 million. As a cumulative group, they're actually worth over $23 million because as a group, that multiple, this is what they call consolidation arbitrage or multiple arbitrage through consolidation. It goes from being worth a 2x multiple, a 2x multiple, a 2x multiple, a 3x multiple, all the way up to a group consolidation of 9 to the right buyer.
So when I started putting together all of the ideas for our holdings company, I was like, these 4 things have to be true for me. Number 1, we have to have the financial model, which is what I kind of just like broke down for you here on the computer. The other 3 parts of it is all of the things that I had made quick mention to. We got to have predictable sales. We have to have our financials in alignment. We have to have profits in those financials. And then the last piece being the transferable value, which is really like, do we have systems and processes that show what we do, playbooks for how we do it? Are we clear on like what's done by a human versus how we're leveraging AI in the organization? And then do we have scorecards showing like what's working, what's broken, and like what the constraint of the business actually is? And so I think when you're able to do all 4 of those things, like my thesis, my personal thesis, is that we're able to have options. Because like me and all of my partners, we don't have this big idea that like, hey, we're gonna build this great business and we're gonna sell it this year, right? We have no short term. We're like thinking about the long term. If like when a deal falls in our lap and it's too good to say no to, then it's like, yeah, as a cumulative group, we will have that conversation and we'll move the deal through. But up until then, we want to build a really good business, something that like, if you think about it like this, as a homeowner, if you're like sitting in your home and you and your wife or you and your whoever are like having a conversation, you're like, you know what? We should sell this and move to our dream house. But then you hire a realtor. That realtor comes in and they're like, hey, before we put this thing on the market, we need to do X, Y, and Z, right? They kind of give you like a honey-do list to go take care of all these things. Maybe you need to redo the landscaping and we've got to redo the floors in here and we've got to repaint. Well, by the time you do that entire list of like fixing the home and making your home a sellable home, you look around and like a lot of times you'll just be like, hey, this is actually exactly what we wanted the entire time. We just didn't, we just didn't fix all the stuff that was broken. And so I think about business in a real similar manner where it's like, hey, if you're thinking about selling your business now, it's probably because like there are some deficiencies inside the business. And so when you build out those 3 systems I just talked about, like a sales process, making sure you have financial literacy and like forecasted budgets and you're actually documenting the actuals in comparison to those, and then you have these systems and processes that like allow you to create a well-oiled machine, it's like you probably won't want to leave, because at some point if you sell the business, like you're just gonna have to take that money and do something else with it, right? You're gonna invest it in something else or start another business or whatever the case is for you specifically. And so what I would say is like that framework of those 4 elements to my holdings company of like the financial model and then those other 3 pieces is like, we call that the scale and exit model, But it's not because it's like you want to exit your business. We just want to have options for like, can we exit the field? Like, can we stop being the owner that's out selling deals every single week and having sales rely on us? Can we stop being the guy that has to order the materials and be the project manager out on site? And then, so like that might be the first exit, right? Exiting the field. The next exit is like, can we exit the day-to-day? Can we have the systems and processes where like the business doesn't just operate without us, but like I said earlier, can it continue growing without us? Third exit, or like kind of the final exit in any sort of business, is really exiting the org chart, which means like, it's what everyone thinks about when they say like, hey, we're gonna exit our business. It's either exiting altogether, like you sell the whole thing and you move on to whatever's next for you, or you do like I did, where you sell part of the business, but you roll over some of your equity into be more of like a shareholder or an investor in that business. When I sold my business back in 2021, I had no idea about how any of this worked. I was just so mesmerized by the idea of like being able to complete an acquisition, being able to say like, hey, I sold I built from scratch a business and, sold that business, that I didn't take the time to like educate myself and learn the nitty gritty details of like what was happening, why it was happening, how they were able to put a deal together like this. And in going through that acquisition, I was able to get the knowledge and meet the right types of people to start to understand this world. And so I only share this video in hopes that it shined a little bit of light and taught you guys something that might be helpful in the future as the consolidation of our industry grows stronger and stronger. And I'll kind of leave you guys with this. If you are focused on any one of the three exits, right? Any of these three exits where it's like we're trying to get you out of the field of like being the guy having to do everything, or we're just trying to get you out of the day-to-day so you can actually become more of a CEO, or you truly are interested in actually selling the business one day and you want to see what it looks like to plug your business into a financial model like I walked you guys through here on the screen, just reach out to me. You can reach me through social media. I'm on all the platforms, Instagram as The Commercial Roofer. You can find me at Cody Klein on Facebook. And I'm a complete nerd for this industry. So if you guys have any questions or want to jam on any of this, just reach out. Be happy to chat.